no matter what the species, I just love taking them on the surface whenever possible. Sea trout being no exception, whether that be on you know, literally dry fly imitation, olive imitations, or at night, whether that be with a big surface lure, or things like muddler minnows, you know, even hitch flies and so on and so forth. Sometimes I firmly believe that the size of surface lures that people fish are too big. You know, if you're getting a lot of, especially on a lighter night as opposed to a really dark night. On a really dark night, I think you can get away, you know, just because of the bigger silhouette and so forth. That, yeah, then I think that a bigger silhouette or a bigger surface lure in general will pay dividends. But actually, on a standard night, or if the fish are just not really committing well to the bigger surface lure, I actually think a muddler, so a long shank muddler, will actually hold you in better stead than those bigger surface lures. The beauty of a muddler as well is that you can actually fish them on the dropper. So you can actually fish a wet fly or a sinking fly on the point and actually fish this on the dropper. Whereas as a rule, if you're fishing like a 3-inch surface lure, then that's very much a solo effort for obvious reasons. So this can actually work really. This pattern I'm going to tie can work really well as a team, or you can fish it solo basically as a small surface lure. Hook in the vise is a partridge saltwater shrimp, which, you know, may look like or seem a strange hook to use for this fly. I use them on size 4 and size 2, so pretty, you know, the larger end of the spectrum. I just like the gape that you get on this hook, but also the shape of the hook. I just think that it's just a really nice hook for this pattern in general. Because I'm going to be spinning deer hair, I'm using GSB. That's in 100 denier. You could use 50. I haven't got any 50, so I'm using the 100. So I may end up with a bigger head, but so be it. So let's start off by securing that on the shank of the hook. Snip off the excess. It can be quite difficult stuff to cut. It's very, very strong. Tail is going to be stripped black hackle fibers. Just take a generous pinch of that. Schlappen, hen fibers, doesn't really matter. And then stick that out just around, I'll probably say 5 mil beyond the hook bend. Take it down. Don't take it too far down the bend because of the curvature on this hook. I'm actually using that for the gape of the hook as much as anything. As per usual, just take a 1 turn in underneath that hackle. The tail, what that does is just kicks it up slightly and stops it from twisting. For a nice even body, dress over that the hackle stem or the butt sections, rather than cutting here, which would then give you a bump as you tie the rest of the body. So that's perfect like that. Body is going to be a flat braid. There's a few different makes. I think Vineyard makes them, might be under the Uni banner, but it's this is the Lagerton stuff, and it's a holographic silver. Just take a length of that. The beauty of this stuff is I don't bother ribbing it, so actually you don't need to. You could utilize, if you haven't got this, utilize holographic silver tinsel and rib it with wire, and that would work as well. Again, I tend to prefer to spend less time at the vise, more time in the river, so this for me is just a great little shortcut material. It's a multi-fiber and it's braided, so that the weaves, basically, even if a fish does cut through one section, it traps in that weave. Just take it up the hook in touching turns, stopping it in that thorax section to take turns either side, go over that base just to secure it in, and snip off the excess as close as you can. It don't have to be too exact because we're doing deer hair and stuff up here. It doesn't need to be that neat, in fairness, because it's going to be covered up anyway. Okay, you don't have to include this stage. This is the pattern I tie. In fairness, when I used to fish this at the start, yeah, God, how many years? Probably more years than I care to remember ago. It was literally just this and then a spun deer hair head, and honestly it worked fantastically well. Over the years you add little elements. Does it really add to the success rate? Probably not. It looks nice and you kind of fish with your eyes first, and if you have confidence in a fly then you're more likely to catch in many ways. So this is, you know, a couple of elements that I added over the years that has, you know, brought me confidence basically. But yeah, if you haven't got jungle cock, don't kind of fret, you know, just drop it. You don't need them. So jungle cock on either side, and they protrude quite far back because if you don't, you're not going to essentially not going to see them because they get trapped underneath the deer hair. So they're going to just measure them up either side. You can tie them in together, align them first and tie them in together. I tend to tie them in separately. What you do as well, you slightly drape them downwards. So rather than running straight down the body, I tend to just slope them downwards slightly. So tie in there and then hold the both butt sections and tie back over them so they are really secure at that point. They're not going anywhere. And snip off the stems. Okay, wing is going to be a black squirrel. If I can find it, there you go. It's a black squirrel or dyed black squirrel. So just take a generous pinch, snip that off. I'm just going to take out some of the loose fibers at the base. If you want to be really fancy about the fly, you can stack the squirrel. I don't bother, these are just fishing flies rather than show flies. Align the wing to more or less where the tail ends. So there's your measuring in point basically. So the where the tail ends, your wing ends. Pinch and loop and secure that in. With a GSB you can really pull at this stage as well. That's the beauty of it. It's really tough stuff. Snip off the butt sections of that squirrel. So at this point you can add in some flash if you wanted to, just to run through the wing. I'm not going to bother. I don't think it actually brings anything to the fly. Tidy up those butt ends of the squirrel. So that's all nice and secure. So for the head section, it's going to be dyed black deer hair. I think this is belly fur. So take a decent pinch. This is where GSB comes into its own as well. It helps with the spinning of the deer hair. If you are new to spinning deer hair, it's not the easiest fibre to work with. There's some great people out there though, and probably one of the finest is a guy called Barry Ord Clark. He is like a master with deer hair, and honestly he's probably cringing at my use of deer hair. But again, mine are fishing patterns. Not that his aren't fishing patterns, but he really is the master of using deer hair. What I'm doing is, with the butt fibres down here, there's always some really fine fluffy fur. Can I strip them out, or just pull them out, because what that does is it helps the spinning process, and that stuff stops it or traps it from spinning. So if you're doing like a really nice showy fly, you could stack the deer hair. Again, this is a fishing fly. What you then do, so the tips, aim for the tips to largely end or meet the point of the hook. When you're happy with that, this is going to be the pinch and loop technique to get the spinning. So it's going to take it around there twice, and then we just slowly pull and go through that deer hair. And you can see how it all just spins and splays. That's great. Just displace that jungle cock slightly there. That's perfect. And what you then need to do is you need to push all of this back and stack it. So there's a couple of ways of doing it. You can use, I've got a really fancy tool here, costs an absolute fortune. It's basically just the end of a biro or pen. And what that does, you just put it onto there and you can stack everything back. You see that? Just stacks it all back. You've got a fine point, probably this one. Yeah, no, it does actually. If you want to do a really fine point on it. So, you know, if you've got a pen that's run out of ink, great recycling. So there, and what you can then do is you can draw all of this back, but you can also push with this tool and just push it back just to stack it. But just draw it back, draw the thread through, and then you're back in the open. So this is going to need a little pinch of deer hair again. You can see just forming up nicely there now. So it's going to take another small pinch. Doesn't need too much in the second pinch. It needs to be buoyant, but not too buoyant. Okay, and you don't want too much deer hair that it's going to, you know, mask the hooking potential basically. So you don't want to mask that gape. Don't need to measure this one up accurately. This is going to be, I literally just do it about halfway down and just pinch loop and just draw it through again. Just like that. Use that pen again just to push it back, give you that stacking effect, but also ease of access to that head, and bring it through to the head just behind the eye. So that's the fly done. What we now do is just tie off there. Just take a couple of turns. And you can really pull with this GSB. So pull it nice and tight. Like so. And snip it off. So that's the fly done. What we obviously need to do next is trim the deer hair. So and actually with this as well, I would also drop in some super glue here before doing it. I'm not going to do it now because what you need to do is drop the super glue in just there and then trim it, but actually I'd have to then wait for the super glue to dry. So for the purpose of the videos, I'm not going to do it. Angle your scissors. So these are actually great deer hair scissors from Tiemco. They got a bit of a serrated edge to the blades, I believe, which make it easier to trim deer hair. There's also like razor blades and stuff which do a really good job with deer hair. You don't need to go that fancy in fairness. So angle your scissors, and you're just gonna, don't go heavy with the first few cuts. Just work that shape. Just keep spinning that vise. Just taking a bit each time. Just be patient with it. and also have a hoover handy before your wife or your better half or your parents or whatever see the mess you've made with the deer hair. It is messy. Okay, that's looking really nice. So slowly build up that taper. So it's just tapering back into that squirrel wing. Like so. Getting happy with that now. Okay. I think that looks pretty neat there actually. So you can see we've still allowed that jungle cock to shine through. Underneath you still got that silver body showing through. You've got a nice taper, you've got easy access to that hook point. There's nothing here that's going to trap that. The fish has access to that hook point. So that's just a really great little muddler pattern. Again, just great on the dropper, or again just use it solo as a small surface lure. You could, if you wanted to, throw a small stinger off the back if you wanted to. Create a secret weapon style to the muddler to make it more of a secret to make it more of a surface lure. But honestly, it's not a particularly big fly, and you tend to find, because everything's pretty much here in line with the hook point anyway, if it's going to take it, it usually just takes the whole thing. So there's not much to worry about. So yeah, give it a go this season and tie up if you find that they're not really taking the bigger surface lure as well. Give this a go and perhaps try it on the dropper, especially if it's a really mild night in July or August. The muddler patterns on the dropper can work really, really well. Tie up a few and I hope they bring you luck. Tight lines.